In this session we're going to put some foundations under the house. Seems like an odd way to go about it, build the house hovering in the air and then put the foundations under it, but that's what we're able to do in 3D modelling. We'll also put some deck railing around, and if time permits we'll have a go at starting to put up some window frames. So the first thing we'll do is go into a top view, and that's not a top view, that's a top view over there, and maximise that view, and we can see the outline of the original building. I want to put a box under that, just a big box that goes down under into the ground. It doesn't really matter how far into the ground it goes. We just want to make this thing look solid by sitting on a concrete block foundation. So we're going to go to box. We could put some specific measurements in, or we could just click and drag. It'll probably go okay-ish. Try and get it fairly accurate. Okay, and we'll give it plenty of height, which we can't yet see in that view. And there's a huge big box just appeared. Now what we want to do is drop that box down so that it just sits slightly under the house. Okay, so I'll just place it there, and then I'll use the camera orbit, or orbit camera. Better maximise that just so you can see it better. And you can see that the building now has a solid foundation underneath it. While we've got it in that view, we're going to drop a texture onto that. And I've already been online and found a concrete block texture. So we'll just shrink that down. Find concrete block texture, here it is, and it's going to be a bit hard to select that. I didn't go onto the right thing. Control Z. I may need to just zoom in on that so I get a bigger version that makes it easier to attach. Okay, so I'll minimise it again, drag and drop onto there. Okay, now we can see some concrete blocks in that view. Obviously there's a scaling issue there, they're not in the correct scale. So now while we've got it selected, we'll just go to modify a list, UVW map. You've been here before, this is old news now. UVW map, and we'll go to box, and we'll fiddle around with the tile sizes. So I'll just randomly throw in 5s at the moment, 5, 5. I'll tell you what, that's looking pretty good. I got a bit lucky there. If we scroll along, you can see it going around the corner, and that looks quite believable. So if we ever, in our animation, get to look underneath the deck, we're going to see a fairly believable looking foundation. And you can see some nice uneven ground around that with that grass. So, in fact, I'll give you a quick render of that just to give you even a more realistic view of it. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So, I'll just zoom back out and probably orbit the camera back slightly so that I can see a little bit more of the background. I'll maximise that. Now the next thing that we'd probably want to be thinking about is some kind of railing around the deck. Now cloning is going to be your best friend here. What I mean by that is that we'll have a common rail that goes around, a common set of posts that go around the deck with a rail on top, and we'll just make up a section of that and then clone it around the place. Now if I go up a little bit high like that, you can see the bearers or joists or whatever you want to call them running through in those positions. They're a bit far apart to look realistic. Normally you'd have them at a spacing of probably either 450 or 600 millimeters, and they look like they're a lot more than that. So while I've got it in this position, I'm just going to click on that deck texture map. Once again, modify a list, down to UVW map, and it's gone back to a much bigger size. So I'll just fiddle around with those numbers again. So the U tile I might make 5. Maybe that's got the boards a little bit small. Maybe we'll go back to 4. but it's the V tile that's going to put more of these bearers or joists in. Okay, so at the moment it's 1. Let's go 3 and see what that looks like. Okay, and you can see now we've got a lot more repetition of that underneath structure there. It just makes it look a little bit more believable. Okay, so now we're going to make a section of railing. So we'll make a post. So we'll go into the corner of the deck in probably the top view. And I'm just going to make a post that's approximately the right size, and then I can refine that size a bit later. So here we go. I'm going to just throw it in a little bit back in from the corner and down into the ground. Okay, so I'm going to drop it down through into the ground and modify its dimensions. Okay, so we'll go to where it says length and width. It's actually showing up as about 405 millimeters at the moment, which is way more chunky than we'd normally have. So we'll drop that back to 100. We could go, if we wanted to, we could go a little bit chunkier. In fact, I rather like the idea of about 120, so let's do that. 120. Now it's going to look quite small, but it's actually a good solid post. It's just that we're looking at it from a fairly long way away. Now we want to think about how far up out of the ground that particular post is going to stick. And there's various ways we can do that. We know how long it is. We know that it's 4,317 millimeters long, but what we probably also need is some sort of reference to get at the right height. Now, if you were building this for real, the council would require you to have a deck railing that's about a metre, a minimum of a metre above the deck surface. So what I'm actually going to do is clone that. Just a quick way of creating another one. Edit, clone, copy. Okay. I'm going to move the clone across. I'm going to modify the height of the clone to 1000. And I'm going to lift the clone up so that it's just sitting on the deck. And if I go in closely in, say, a front or side view, I can see exactly where that's sitting on the deck. Just needs to come up a tiny bit. And I can use that as my reference tool to get the height of the other one correct. Okay, so I'm going to now move that across right next to there, and I want them both to stand up the same distance out of the deck. So here we go. We can see them in that view side by side. And I need to drop that one down. I need to move that one down so that it's sitting up at the same height as this one, or approximately. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Okay, don't need that anymore. That was just thrown in there to assist me with working out that measurement. Now I'll just make sure that I've got that particular post exactly where I want it. I think by the look of it, it's possibly a little bit far in from the corner. Yeah, it's a fair way in from the corner. I want it almost out on the corner, so I'm going to move it using the select and move tool and sit it out there. Now at this stage, because we're going to clone that, we'd be thinking about what sort of material we're going to put on it. We could put a wood texture on it, we could put white paint on it, we could put purple paint on it, anything we want. So I'm actually going to, I'll go fairly traditional here. I'll make that post just a white painted post. So I need to mix up, well, I won't need to mix a white, but I'll just go to Material Editor over here. I'll go down to Ray Trace. I'll click in the, I think it's a double click in the material heading up the top there. I'll go over to Diffuse, and I can make white simply by giving maximum amounts of each of the red, green and blue. That'll make white. Now if I wanted to, I can add gloss and I can add reflection and I can add transparency and luminosity and all that junk. I don't really need to do that for this. So I've now got my white material. I've already got this post selected, so if I go over here to this little panel just here, right click, assign material to selection. So my post has now gone white. Now to confirm that, I can do a quick render. Okay, so I'll go over here and do a quick render, and that should show up as a white post. Okay, that's pretty white. It sort of looks grey on one side just because of the way the light's hitting it, but that's white enough for my liking. So now's as good a time as any to move that post around the deck into the various positions that we want to clone it. Okay, so I'm going to clone it all down one side of the deck, and then I'll copy all of those across to the other side. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So I'll go to a top that right now because I don't want to use up too much of your time. So we've got all our posts down that side. The next thing we'd do would be to put some railing on it. So I think I'll just put a big wide board right across the top of that. Okay, so here we are in the left view. We're looking down there, and I need a board that's going to be 20 meters long. Okay, so there's my post right there. So I want to sit, now the piece of timber that we'd put on there would be about so that's 120. We'd go about a 240 by 50 board. Okay, it'd probably be made out of treated pine or something. So I'm going to throw something on there that looks about right. Doesn't matter if it goes down into the post a little bit. Right, so it's going to be roughly 240 by 50. If I go over to parameters over here, you can see I just guessed and I ended up with 250 by 55-ish. Okay, so I can just neaten up those to a nice round figure. I'll make that 50, I'll make that 240 because that's a standard treated pine size. I'll make sure that it's kind of centered on there. And I also want to put the length in, which the length is actually showing as height. Don't get too confused about that. That's just how the program rolls. So I want 20 meters long there, so I'm going to go, that 99.784 becomes 20,000. Now it probably won't actually go exactly where I want it to. I may need to move it. In fact, I do, but that's just normal. Okay, so that should now fit pretty much perfectly on the deck. Okay. Now I could put another rail down underneath that's probably a different size, or we could run some sort of wire. Often you'd have like a braided stainless steel wire around there. I think I'll go with the stainless steel look, but I'll put that in later. So I've kind of got, I'll just show you a bigger camera view of that. Now there it is, just sitting there, and we need to put our white material on. So we go to Material Editor, there's our white material, right click at the top panel and assign material to selection. Okay, I'll do a quick render on that. And there's our railing down that side. Now, I'll probably leave that tutorial there. I'll come back in the next tutorial and we'll just clone that railing. So we'll take that same railing and put it round all the other sides of our deck. So that's all for this tutorial. I'll be back shortly with the next update. Thank you very much.